What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA
Wednesday, April 7th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, we have a 9-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I'm going to start off with a high risk, high reward value play. This is a tournament play only, but I like Ish Smith from the Washington Wizards playing the Orlando Magic, who have the 6th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Ish Smith has averaged 18.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 21 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He scored 21 and 9 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 21 and 22 minutes. He's projected at 18.8 fantasy points here tonight. On FanDuel, that's 5.4 times value. He's $3,500 FanDuel salary, and he's only $300 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites. And he scored 13, 16, 19, 24, and 10 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Magic. I'm hoping the Washington Wizards can beat the Magic in a blowout, and Ish Smith can get at least 20 minutes here. I think he can score you 20 fantasy points or more, and he could go off, score 25 to 30, and crush value here. It's a fantastic matchup, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 224.5 points scored in this game, but it's definitely a high-risk, high-reward play. But I like Ish Smith here versus the Orlando Magic. Okay, another point guard that I like is Ja Morant from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Atlanta Hawks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Ja Morant has averaged 34.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 28% usage rate. He scored 17, 30, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 28, and 28 minutes. He had a 27% usage rate last game. I hope he can get at least 30 minutes here. It is a back-to-back, but he hasn't played that many minutes the past few games, so he should be good to go. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 34.1 fantasy points scored in this game. That's right around 5 times value. He's $7,000 FanDuel salary and $100 more on DraftKings. So I like this pick because Ja Morant has scored 43, 33, 45, 45, and 28 fantasy points in the last 5 games versus the Hawks. And Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game, 228.5 points scored in this game. So I like Ja Morant here versus the Atlanta Hawks.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I'm going to give you another value play here, especially on DraftKings. I like Jeremy Lamb from the Indiana Pacers playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Jeremy Lamb has averaged 21.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 22 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 44 fantasy points last game, playing 23 minutes with a 29% usage rate. He's projected at 20.1 fantasy points here tonight, and that's just about 5 times value. He's $4,100 FanDuel salary, but he's $700 less on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites, but I love that DraftKings price. I think he's priced way too low on DraftKings. Even if he only gets 20 minutes or more, he should be able to hit value here. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game. And Jeremy Lamb has scored 29, 34, 22, 26, and 37 fantasy points in the last 5 games. It's a fantastic matchup, a fast-paced game, a high-scoring game. The stars are aligning here, so I like Jeremy Lamb here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay, another shooting guard that I like is Will Barton from the Denver Nuggets playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have the 11th worst defense overall and they're middle of the pack defending opposing shooting guards. Will Barton has averaged 25 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 41, 34, and 31 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 34, and 34 minutes. So he's been on fire. Now, he's only projected at 26.1 fantasy points here tonight, but on DraftKings, that's close to 5 times value. He's $5,800 FanDuel salary, and he's $400 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223.5 points scored in this game. I'm going to ride the hot hand here, especially on DraftKings. I think his price is a little bit too low for the minutes that he's playing and his recent performance. So I like Will Barton here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics playing the New York Knicks, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing small forwards. Jaylen Brown has averaged 38.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 30% usage rate. He scored 21, 28, and 43 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 25, and 27 minutes. He's projected at 36.8 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can get you 40 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's $7,700 FanDuel salary and 100 more on DraftKings. I like this pick because he scored 38, 41, and 31 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Knicks. He's been in a slump the past couple of games. I expect him to break out of that slump here tonight. So I like Jaylen Brown here versus the New York Knicks. Okay, another small forward that I like is Mikal Bridges from the Phoenix Suns playing the Utah Jazz, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing small forwards, but Mikal Bridges has averaged 27.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 15% usage rate. He scored 35, 27, and 13 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 32, 23, and 28 minutes. He's projected at 26.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $5,300 FanDuel salary and 200 more on DraftKings. Now, he did score 32 fantasy points in his last game versus the Jazz, but you never know what you're going to get with Mikal Bridges. This is a tournament play only. He can score you 15 or 35 fantasy points or anywhere in between. He's a volatile player, but I think his price is right to hit value on both sites. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 225.5 points scored in this game. So I like Mikal Bridges as a high-risk, high-reward play here versus the Utah Jazz.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Elise Johnson from the Brooklyn Nets playing the New Orleans Pelicans, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Elise Johnson has averaged 20.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 14 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 22 fantasy points last game, playing 17 minutes with a 25% usage rate. He's projected at 18 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.2 times value. He's $3,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $500 more on DraftKings. So I like that FanDuel price. Now I like this pick because it's a good matchup, it's a fast-paced game, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 231 points scored in this game, so plenty of fantasy points to go around. So I like Elise Johnson here versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Now another FanDuel play that sticks out is PJ Washington. I probably wouldn't play him on DraftKings, but he's only $5,200 FanDuel salary, averaging 27.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. And he scored 11, 24, and 26 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 21, 29, and 26 minutes. He's projected at 27.6 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's only $5,200 FanDuel salary, but he's $900 more on DraftKings, so I'm not interested in this play on DraftKings, but I think he makes an interesting play on FanDuel because he's got a fantastic matchup. The OKC are the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Now, he had a bad game last game, but if he can get you 27 fantasy points on FanDuel, if he can just score his season average in a plus matchup where Vegas thinks there's going to be 214 points scored in this game, and he scored 39 and 22 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the OKC, I think he's got a lot going for him on FanDuel, so I like PJ Washington only on FanDuel here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, another power forward that I like. Now, this is a play I only like on DraftKings. I like Tony Bradley from the Oklahoma City Thunder playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Tony Bradley has scored 25, 32, and 18 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 22, 24, and 24 minutes. He's projected at 19.4 fantasy points here tonight. I think he's going to score 20 fantasy points or more, so right around that projection, which is over 5 times value on DraftKings. It's only 4 times value on FanDuel because he's $4,900 FanDuel salary, but he's $900 less on DraftKings. So only $4,000 DraftKings salary. I love that DraftKings price. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 214 points scored in this game. So I like Tony Bradley on DraftKings here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, moving on to the center position. Lots of value plays on this slate, so I think you want to pay up at the center position. So I like Karl Anthony Towns from the Minnesota Timberwolves playing the Indiana Pacers, who have the 8th worst defense overall, and they give up and they're middle of the pack defending opposing centers. Karl Anthony Towns has averaged 48.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. he scored 51, 67, and 58 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 44, and 34 minutes. He's projected at 51 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.5 times value, but I think he can get close to 60 fantasy points here tonight and get you 5 times value or more, even on FanDuel, where he's 11,400 FanDuel salary, but he's 700 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. He scored 54, 32, 64, and 38 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Pacers. So I like Karl Anthony Towns here versus the Indiana Pacers. Okay, another center that I like is Kelly Olynyk from the Houston Rockets playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a pretty good defense overall, but they give up the 12th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Kelly Olynyk, he's averaged 25 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate, but he scored 28, 43, and 19 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 33, and 21 minutes. He's projected at 25.7 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score at least 30 fantasy points and get you 5 times value or more. He's 5,600 FanDuel salary and 300 more on DraftKings. So he scored 27, 34, and 31 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Mavericks. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 225 points scored in this game. So a pretty high scoring game here. So I like Kelly Olynyk here versus the Dallas Mavericks.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.